Now what I want to do here, is, by the way, on a dare, it's sort of a Shakespearean rap, really, with meaning, and I'm going to make a mistake so that we can also show the punch-in, which is happening. So let's do this. We hit record and play. Life is groovy with the ASR. Without it, your dreams wouldn't get too far. Da-da-da-da-da. The power of this one makes me quiver. Give it a week, it'll make you a star. You're so lucky you got an ASR. Okay, let's see what we've got.
When I came up, I thought, because you know, Pete Rock and DITC and all them, I thought I needed an SP1200. I gotten a chance to use that and I hated the way that thing worked. I was more of a keyboard sampler kind of guy. That was more what just felt natural to me.
I always leaned more towards the keyboard thing. I never really got into the pads.
I tried an MPC, which just seemed too complicated. Like it just took too long to do what I wanted to do. SP1200, I just thought sounded really fucked up in general. And I think if you didn't have like a board and all that kind of stuff, you weren't gonna quite get the right sound out of it.
I started with the EPS and I liked it, and it worked well. And then I got the EPS 16. It's just what I learned how to make beats on from the person who taught me how to make beats.
You know, it made perfect sense for me. You got this keyboard where it samples and it's like, it's got a warm sampler on it and it's got a ton of effects. Prior to the ASR-10, I was actually using the Triton for a while. A lot of those qualities about the ASR-10 drew me to it. And, you know, just hearing cats like Knots and RZA, you know, the sound that they produced from this keyboard, I knew I had to get it. I was just like, I gotta get this thing.
Let's make a tape here. Perfect. There's our gunshot.
The workflow is just really simple. And I could probably use the thing without the lights on, you know. I use a lot of vintage keyboards. I got a Fender Rhodes, I got a Memory Moog, a Poly Moog, Poly 6, I got a 6-track.
Moog Voyager, Nord Electro 2, Juno 106, Prophet.
But mostly it's just sounds that I'll sample in, or I'll play something or have somebody play something and I'll sample it back in the ASR. The ASR is pretty much where I do all my sequencing and sampling from.
So my rig was basically ASR-10 as the centerpiece, and then I had a mixer, and through the mixer I had a turntable for sampling records. And then I had a motif rack. I had a computer which ran Reason. So a lot of the synthesizers I used were from Reason. And then I had an Akai S20, which I also sampled my drums into to give it even more crunch. So all my drums were ran from the S20 into the ASR-10.
So I would sequence on the SP, and I would just like chain the ASR to it. So the ASR would be like the samples and sounds, and the SP would be the drums.
ASR-10, you sample and you hit the button and the sample's right there. It was just that simple, and to me that was like, okay, that's what I want.
And the thing I love about the ASR-10 is you can sample into it while it's playing. So I would pretty much play a riff or like a keyboard riff, and while the drums are going, I would play it and sample it into one key.
And I like that it had EQs in it, already built in, had effects, so I could kind of make a beat inside the machine and not have to have a board and do a bunch of work like that, and I could still make beats that sounded good that way.
I think the very fact that the ASR-10 doesn't have a screen where you can see waves directly affects why that piece is so great. When you're chopping on the ASR-10, you're doing it with numbers. So you're scrolling your start and end points with numbers, and you're doing it with the little scroller.
Okay. Now, I love it. We're going to do some sampling. So empty the machine again, and so we have a lot of room, and we're going to add some sampling.
The ASR-10's got a really unique sample engine in it. When you import and sample sound into it, it changes the sound. It does something to it, and the reason behind that is because of the circuitry of the actual keyboard.
It colors sounds in a different way. It's unique only to itself. So I could sample like a record in the MPC, I could sample it in the SP1200, and I could do it on the ASR. And I think the ASR would just sound better Another thing that's great about it, you can make it sound really grimy or you can make it sound clean. Depending on what you're going for, it has that kind of range within the machine.
The beauty of the ASR is the simplicity. Like, you're very limited in what you can do, and that's what makes it fresh.
Yeah, there's limitations. You know, you don't have a screen, you can't chop visually necessarily, but the great things about it make up for it.
I think the whole thing that makes that thing great is you got to put everything in there. Like, you can use the ASR stock sounds, but they're kind of bullshit. Guys who use the motif, they're using the same sounds, you know what I mean?
You can take a sample and copy it, and it doesn't use the memory, so you can chop it into a million different things and it won't drain the memory. And I really like the effects, and I still do. Like, I don't know how they did it, but Ensoniq has some of the best reverbs and delays and distortion things. And I'll even run vocal tracks through the ASR effects. I'll run all kinds of stuff and use the reverb. The reverb's amazing.
What I'm going to do now is save the sequence back to my original disc. So I put my original disc in there, and always make sure that the window is in the closed thing. You got a little window here on the back. Put that in. Let's saving something. Powerful.
Up until probably like 2008, I was using floppies. I got beats that are 4 discs for a fucking beat, and I'll lose disc 3. I have like shoe boxes of floppies at home still, everywhere. And every once in a while, somebody wants an old ass beat, and I gotta dig that thing out. So after a while, I just started literally tracking everything I did out, because I just didn't want to go through that anymore.
I never used the floppy to save my beats. I would do the beat, and then I would immediately dump it and track out into Pro Tools. So all of my tracks were in Pro Tools sessions.
I run my ASR through like a EQ I have, and then basically just use MIDI and track them out in Pro Tools.
I never used MIDI. I would just hit record on Pro Tools and just press play and just chop them in Pro Tools.
Each track that I did on the ASR-10 was in Pro Tools already. So I would actually make the beat in the ASR-10, track out, mix it, and have it ready to go. So if I had to, if I sold the track or if I had to work on it, I didn't have to worry about loading up a floppy and then worry about dumping the actual audio. I would have it ready in a Pro Tools session already.
You know what I would do is play the sequence with just the kick on the one, and then mute the kick, and then just, do it over and over and over, and then line everything up from that first kick, put the tempo into Pro Tools, and, just maneuver it around. That's the way hip hop works. You find a certain thing and it fits, and it still works to this day. Like, I bet they had no clue at all. I don't know what they envisioned. They probably thought it would be like for like movie score guys who want to import string samples and stuff.
I think still to this day, the ASR-10 still isn't necessarily categorized in association with hip hop like the MPC is. It's far from it. You got a lot of beat makers out there who don't know what an ASR-10 is still, and maybe they've heard of it, but they don't know that it's directly, relative to hip hop culture. So I don't think initially the makers knew about it. But I'm sure that they do now.
I met the guy that used to work in the factory for Ensoniq, and he has all the old parts and stuff, and he fixes ASR-10. And I was asking him why they're so erratic, and he was telling me when they made the machine, technology wasn't really available to do what they designed it for. So that's why it gets so hot and you get all these errors, but I think the way it pushes all that circuitry is what makes it sound so good too. They designed it and kind of jacked up, but it ended up being something great, which is kind of like hip hop. We make the best out of some bullshit, so it makes sense to me.